All right, now we are live and recording. So we're doing this every week, every Thursday evening at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And we're going to bring you a guest every week. And Laura's also going to, in just a minute, explain to you what's happening in publishing and give you some updates on how the situation is impacting the publishing world. And also we'll be celebrating the success of some of our subscribers. What you're seeing behind me is Children's Book Insider, various covers of that, which is our monthly newsletter. It's the Children's Writing Monthly. It's filled with market tips and all sorts of great stuff. I know a bunch of CBI subscribers are always here when we do that. And again, this is our 30th year. The May issue will be our 30th anniversary issue of Children's Book Insider. So let me go ahead and start sharing the screen and we'll get this party started. All right. So today's topic is finding inspiration in your everyday world. You're going to be meeting Teresa Funk real soon, who's the author of Burst of Brilliance and a bunch of other things. We'll tell you all about her. And before we do that, there's two ways if you are new to us. Those of you who did not get emails about this, maybe you saw something on Facebook or you came upon a blog post or someone sent you the link and you want to be in on this every week, there are two ways to do it. This is one way, and the other way where you get a goodie, where you get something free. But if you're not interested in getting free stuff, the simple way to do it is go to writeforkids.org/social, and you'll get on the list and you'll find out what's happening every week. And the way to get something free is to go to writeforkids.org, ultimate-cheat sheet. You'll get our ultimate children's writing cheat sheet. We've taken 30 years of our best knowledge and put it into one ebook. And it is really just the exact information you need to get started. No nonsense, no filler. It's sort of something, we want to do something special for our 30th anniversary. And we created this and it's completely, absolutely free. And if you sign up for that, you will be on our list and you will get all the notifications. So with that, we're going to celebrate because Laura's here. I'm going to introduce you to Laura. She's my wife. She's not my wife of 30 years. It's been it'll be 28 years soon.
Next week.
Next week it'll be 28 years. She started the business 30 years ago. And she is going to take you the rest of the way. It's been a pleasure warming you up. And here's Laura.
Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. And for those of you who've been with us for all of our distancing socials, thanks for coming back. And as you know, we do a celebration every week of the successes of our subscribers. So here's who we're featuring this week. Karen Donaldson is going to have a memoir piece published in Chicken Soup for the Soul BU.
Karen is with us tonight. I
and
saw her.
Karen is with us. Awesome.
Everybody give a little cheer for Karen in the chat box.
Yay, Karen. And that is coming out in April 2021. That got pushed back because of what's happening right now in publishing. So Karen's going to have to wait a little longer to see that come out. But good for you, Karen. Congratulations. Roman Yasieko, and I'm sure I totally destroyed your name there, Roman. I am sorry. His debut picture book was published by Beaming Books in February of this year. And Roman wrote to us to say this. Your CBI, Children's Book Insider, Above the Slush opportunity in April of 2018 with Beaming Books resulted in an acquisition offer just 7 weeks later. And he is thrilled. So we are thrilled too, Roman. So thank you for letting us know that. And for those of you who don't know what the Above the Slush Pile code is, in our newsletter every month, we have either an editor or agent profile. And they give us a special submission code to our readers, our subscribers, who get to use that when they submit so that their work goes to the top of the pile. And so I'm glad you took advantage of that, Roman, and congratulations. And then also, Lynn Marie has had 2 new picture books come out in 2019. Moldy Locks and the 3 Scares from Sterling Publishing, and Let's Eat Mealtime Around the World from Beaming Books. Beaming Books is clearly in our spotlight this week as well. And if you are a subscriber to CBI, you know that Lynn Marie is the person responsible for bringing us those above the slush pile codes. She does our editor and agent profiles. So congratulations to Lynn Marie. We're happy to see her successes there as well. So as always, send me your good news. I want to hear what's going on with you. You can email us at mail@writeforkids.org and put celebrate in the subject line, and we will feature you on a distancing social. And your good news can be anything. It can be you found your perfect critique group. It can be you got an article published, or you finished that pesky first draft of your manuscript. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be a publication. We want to celebrate all your accomplishments along the way. And as you know, there are lots of little accomplishments that add up to the big final payoff of seeing your work in print. And each one of them is worth celebrating. So please let us know, and we will feature you on a future distancing social. So I am going to give you a few industry updates here. And again, I do this every week. And if you want to see if this is the first time you've joined us, on our blog on writeforkids.org, which is our main website, you can find our blog, and we post the replay links to our past distancing socials on our blog. So you can find those and see the updates from the last 2 weeks and our celebrations and even our special guests. So Nathan Bransford is a writer and a former literary agent, and he has a great blog, which I recommend that you all follow. But he has an interview up there with industry expert Mike Shatskin on how coronavirus will affect the publishing industry. And Mike Shatskin is sort of an expert on the workings of the industry and how digital publishing has affected print publishing and all those kind of things. And he's giving his projections here on how publishing is going to change over the next year or so because of what's going on right now. And if you're interested in that, which I find very interesting, you can go to Nathan's blog and actually listen to the audio of that interview if you'd like, or read the transcript. And instead of putting the long link up here, I just said, go to his blog there, nathanbransford.com. And this particular post was April 1st. So you can scroll down until you find that. A little bit of sales update here. Book sales for the week ending March 28th. Juvenile fiction has grown by 13% in the US, particularly humor, fantasy and magic, and the classics. And juvenile fiction has been outpacing adult fiction. Actually, sales of kids' books have been outpacing sales of adult books as a whole over the last couple of months. For the week ending over April 4th, overall sales grew by 6.9%. So that's good. The last week of March, sales on books just tanked. And I think it's because everybody was just getting ready for stay at home, their minds were elsewhere, and book sales really dropped. And a lot of independent stores, it took them a while to kind of figure out how to keep selling books when their stores were closed, how to get books to customers. But the sales started to come up again beginning of April. And of course, juvenile books were certainly boosted by Easter-related titles. Juvenile nonfiction has grown 53% in March compared to the previous 5 weeks, end of January through February. So that's a huge growth in nonfiction. Again, I think that is mostly due to parents homeschooling their kids. So if you are a nonfiction writer and you have books out there, I'm hoping that this will be reflected on your next royalty statement. That's good news for you. I also suggest a lot of children's writers are very generously reading their books out loud, on Facebook, creating YouTube videos, and making these available for free that parents can use with their kids. And that's really wonderful. But I think if you have anything in your book that can tie in with lesson plans, the curriculum that kids are still studying while they're at home, add that to your videos. Talk about how parents can tie in your book with a particular science lesson they might be teaching their second grade kids right now. If you have teacher's guides on your website that are downloadable, mention that in your videos so that parents can download them as well. And also put a link in your videos or right below your videos on where to buy your book. There is no shame in that. It's okay to ask people to buy your books, even if you're giving them free information. I think a lot of people would love to do that. They want to keep supporting you. So don't feel shy about putting those links in your videos and in the stuff that you are giving away right now. We Need Diverse Books, which is an organization that was formed a few years ago to promote inclusiveness and multiculturalism and own voices in children's books, launches the Emergency Fund for Diverse Creatives in Children's Publishing. So what this is, it's a $500 fund, financial aid, that can go to if you are a diverse author, illustrator, or publishing professional and you've lost income due to the pandemic. And by diverse, they mean anyone who belongs to any kind of minority group. And there you can apply for it at their website, diversebooks.org, and then click on the Our Programs button at the top of the page. And the first one there that's listed is this emergency fund. They are accepting 70 applications in the first round, and then they're closing it just so they can catch up and read through the applications and disperse the funds. And then they will open it up for another round. So I don't know if the first round's full yet. They just announced this a couple days ago. But go ahead and if you qualify, send in your application, and you may have to wait for the second round. But I know they're working very hard to keep up with it as much as they can. So it's $500 per applicant who qualifies. And if you think this is a great cause and you want to donate to it, there is a donate button at the bottom of the page when you open up that My Programs tab and you click on the emergency fund. On the info page about the emergency fund at the bottom, there's a donate button. So if you would like to donate to this cause, you can do that there as well. And finally, to submit or not. This is the big question we'll be talking about every week. And the last couple weeks, I have said the kind of over industry wisdom right now among editors, agents, people who've been talking about this is, yes, keep submitting. Publishers are acquiring, agents are shopping workaround. What might be affected kind of a few months down the road is how quickly the new books will come out, because some pub dates have been pushed back. And actually next week, I'll give you more information on that. But I've got a little more detail on that whole philosophy right now. Several articles have come out in the last week on this. Agents, a lot of agents are focusing on submitting projects that stand out in some way. They understand that publishers might trim down their lists after this for the next year, 2 years. In other words, they'll be publishing fewer books because we've had a lot of staff layoffs, even with some big publishers. And so the staffs are smaller. This means probably fewer books will get published in the next couple years, because editors can only edit so many books per season. So agents are really focusing on stuff that has strong sales appeal, that has a hook to it, that fits a real current niche that is underserved, that if they're submitting to a publisher that focuses on a certain kind of book, the projects they submit have to really fit that publisher's focus very, very precisely. So sort of general mid-list fiction, maybe not so much right now. Some agents are focusing on books with authors work from authors who already have a relationship with a publisher. So authors who have already published a couple books with a publisher, they're submitting their new books to them and holding off on the new authors for a bit to see, waiting till things get a little more back to normal. People are actually going back to work in full. On the other hand, some agents are saying, you know what? The new authors have a leg up right now because they're not going to demand as big an advance as the big names. And publishers are really watching their budget, and they're more apt to spend money on books where they can give a smaller advance because it's a brand new author. So again, I don't have one definitive answer for you, but I think overall, really great wisdom right now is spend time working on your project so that it is as strong and unique as you can bake it. And if your project doesn't have a strong, unique hook to it, you probably want to rethink it a bit. And that's kind of good advice at any time, but especially now. If publishers are really going to be watching their pennies and maybe buying fewer new projects over the next 6, 10, 12 months, you might want to make sure that yours has something about it that is special, that stands out. And I think that is a really good way to be spending your time right now before you get ready to submit to an agent or an editor. Okay. So I would like to welcome my guest, Teresa Funk. Teresa, go ahead and turn on your camera and your microphone. Hey, Teresa.
Hi, Laura. How are you?
Good. So everyone, a lot of you already are familiar with Teresa and her work, but for those of you who aren't, she has way too many credits to fit on one slide. What I have here is about half of what she's done. But Teresa is an author, and she, on her website, teresafunk.com, and with her small press, Homefront Heroes, she has, or I'm sorry, Victory House Publishing, she has published 7 books on World War II, historical fiction, 5 in her Homefront Heroes middle grade series, and 2 books for adults and young adults, and some middle graders, I think, enjoy them. She has done several things for us on our Writing Blueprint site. She is the instructor for our self-publishing blueprint. So she is a self-publishing genius. And she has done actually 6 of our Writing Solutions webinars for us. You see 3 of them right here. And her newest project, Bursts of Brilliance for a Creative Life, is her newest book. And her burstsofbrilliance.com site and very inspiring blog, all about creativity and just making it work creatively. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So Teresa, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see everybody virtually.
Yes, it is. It is. So we're talking about, you know, finding inspiration in your everyday life. And I'm just going to go back real quick to the first slide here. I picked this picture because a lot of you with your kids at home, this is now your everyday life. You know, you've got kids just trying to entertain themselves in whatever way they can. And your life might be a tad more chaotic than you are used to. But Teresa, can writers find inspiration and ways to be creative even during these chaotic and very different times that we're living in?
Yeah, so I just saw in the chat box that it said not seeing Teresa, so I don't know if that's for
I'm
one.
going to stop sharing, so hopefully that helps.
Okay.
I saw you on my screen, so it could be,
Yeah.
if you know, sometimes people, if you have it set as speaker view on your, the top of your screen, then whoever's talking shows up and the other people don't. So that could have been what you had.
That could have been it. Yeah, sure.
So,
Yeah, so go ahead.
Nope, continue, please.
Okay. I wanted to just start out, I don't always do this, but I wanted to start out by just reading a really short excerpt from my book, Bursts of Brilliance. And as you can see, this is what we authors call our reading copy because it's kind of beat up.
Mhm.
And it's got my notes in it, and it's, you know, dog-eared and has all kinds of notes references for us. So when you go to readings, you see authors often have our reader copy, and they're usually they've traveled with us everywhere, and we're sort of attached to them. Like they're like an appendage. So I wanted to share one of the excerpts from this book, and Bursts of Brilliance for a Creative Life is actually based on my blog, which I've been writing for 6 years, and it's a weekly blog. I started it as inspiration for authors and entrepreneurs who were just trying to get by leading a creative life with all of the challenges that go along with that. And then the blog started getting read by teachers and healthcare professionals and businesswomen. And I realized that everybody has an inner artist, and we all are trying to create, regardless of how busy we are with jobs and children and other responsibilities. And so every week I write about the creative life, and the book is made up of those blog posts, very short excerpts. And so this is a short excerpt, but it's kind of taking on a new meaning for me lately. And this one is called, Where Do We Engage in Art? A writer friend asked me about my perfect place in my home to read. My answer, my bed, under the warmth of my down comforter, reading a great novel in the soft light of my reading lamp. My kitchen table, with my morning newspaper and a steaming cup of coffee. My front porch, sitting in our Adirondack chair, catching up on my magazines and waving to the neighbors as they walk by. My study, in my comfy green recliner next to the bay window with my overly cluttered bookshelves behind me. My office, devouring the hundreds of books I use to research my World War II novels. My bathtub, on the rare occasion I have time to soak away my worries. My exercise bike, because reading helps the time fly. My big blue couch in my family room at the end of a long day when all I want to do is shut off my overworked mind. I was talking to a writer friend once who explained how she uses 4 chairs when producing her work. One chair is where she reads. Another is where she goes to do research. Another is at her desk where she sits to write. Another is a chair set aside just for proofing her work. As she moves locations, she triggers different parts of her creative mind. I have a magnet in my refrigerator that says, "A room without books is like a body without a soul," a quote from Cicero. I would take this one step further and say, a room without art is like a body without a soul. Music, literature, and art should surround us at all times. Wherever and however we engage with art is the best place to do it.
Very nice.
So I think for a lot of us, you know, life in the 21st century meant that our houses were mainly the places where we cooked dinner and we slept and you know, we cleaned our house now and then. I'm down in my office right now, which is where I do most of my work. And you can see the books behind me, and there's a computer monitor over there. And, you know, we kind of get used to having the places where we work. And as writers, I always recommend that people have a writing space. As my friend was describing, different spaces that trigger different parts of your creative mind. But that has got a little upended lately for a lot of people whose kids are now home all day and have maybe taken over some of the spaces where we would normally have enjoyed doing some of our creative work. Some of us have spouses who used to go off to work and are now working from home, and maybe they've taken over our offices or our studios because it's a quieter place for them to have their conference calls. And so we aren't just seeing a disruption in our thinking and our focus, but we're seeing literal disruptions in our homes and in our places where we create. And for some people, that really upended the way we do our work. But there's a flip side to that too, which is that many of us now, because we're spending so much time in our homes, we're kind of walking around and we're noticing things that we hadn't noticed in a while. We're noticing that we've always intended to straighten up our office, or we've always intended to turn a room in the house into our writing space, or we've intended to go through those files and organize our projects, but there hadn't been time to do it. And now we're able to kind of look around in our houses and say, can I create something new? Can I find a new way for me to feel comfortable and excited about my writing? What can I do differently to sort of escape my children and find my quiet place where I can create? And so I think right now it's challenging. It's very challenging for a lot of people to be in our homes and to be trying to work. But I'm seeing some really, really creative and interesting things coming from that as we kind of work our way through these challenges.
Mm-hmm. I wonder too if we can kind of train ourselves, if we have a notebook or a special pen or something that says to us, this is my time for my creativity, and you can pick that up and get into that mind space quickly. Because a lot of people who are homeschooling, well, you were telling me about a friend of yours, Teresa, who had 14 Zoom calls this week just for her kids, for
From teachers
homeschooling
and
with
coaches
various
and
children. There's not a lot of time left for your own creativity if you're doing that. Plus, maybe you have a job that you're trying to work from home as well. And it's a matter of finding a way to quickly steal when you have 10 empty minutes. Suddenly, how can you get yourself instantly into that mind space where you can be creative for 10 minutes? And maybe if we can create some little triggers for us, we have like I said, a special notebook that we know when we pick that up, this is our creative notebook, and maybe it helps us get into that space quickly. And there are probably other things, whatever works for you. You go sit in a certain chair, or you have a certain mug that you fill with tea, and just holding that says, okay, this is my time now for 10 minutes. And I think we have to start being mindful of those kinds of things as well, because we don't often have the luxury right now of having uninterrupted time to ease into the creative process.
Yes, absolutely. And I think for a lot of people, it's even just about the time, the focus and the attention and just the heart and energy for creation. And when this first happened, the first thing I heard was a lot of people said to me, oh, you're going to be doing so much writing. You're going to create so much new work. Our artists are just going to love this time. They're going to just go crazy with creation. And I think I kind of hoped that would happen. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this will be a really good thing. But then what I noticed is that for me, there were different people reacted differently. I had writer friends who, for the first 2 weeks of the lockdown, they couldn't write at all. They were just, they were so distracted and worried and concerned. And especially if they were trying to write a fun children's book, it's kind of hard to get up the energy to do that. And then I also had friends who, like me, our sudden concern was, how do I learn the new technologies quickly? How do I get my website up to speed? How do I, see what kinds of loans and grants I can apply for? And that was a full-time job. And so in those first couple of weeks, I didn't do any more writing than I normally would. So I think part of it is just not succumbing to that pressure of people saying, well, you must be writing a lot right now because you've got more time, because some of us do and some of us don't. Some of us have kids at home. Some of us have jobs, day jobs that continued. Some of us are finding it very worrisome if we have friends and family in some of the hot spots. And so, what I would say right now is absolutely, when you get those inspirations, grab a piece of paper, a sticky note, jot them down, keep that pad of paper by the bedside. I have a little thing that hangs up in the shower so that I can write down an idea that I get in the shower. Don't lose those ideas. And if you get the time and the energy, then absolutely find a way to work on them. But don't beat yourself up right now if that's not happening either.
Mm-hmm.
Some days we're going to have creative energy. Other days we're going to need our energy just to get through the day. And I think we as artists need to understand that we too need to rest and take care of ourselves in this process. And so kind of just riding the wave of, if you feel inspired, absolutely right. And if you feel like, man, I'm tired and I need a break, then read. Reading is great, great exercise for writers. Go for a walk. You know, we are observant people. We need to keep our, you know, in touch with our senses. Talk on the phone to somebody, because emotions are what drive our writing. And so we don't want to be stuffing those emotions right now. We want to be feeling them and expressing them and allowing them to come out in our work. So yeah, so whatever you're doing it right, and do what you need to do for yourself.
Exactly. Even if you're just journaling for 10 minutes every morning about how you don't want to write. There you go. You know, yes, I totally agree. Now, what if you're a writer who's got a deadline? You've got a book under contract. You've got to deliver a finished manuscript September 1st. And you just can't get yourself to focus on it. Do you have any ideas or advice for those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the writers that I know that are under deadline, or even a self-imposed deadline that they wanted to be able to submit their manuscript by a certain time, I think that what helps is just remembering for us that those stories matter. Somebody believed in that story enough to buy it, enough to give you that deadline, and they thought it was important, and they thought it needed to be out there in the world. So this isn't just about you. This is about, at some point, the universe decided that that story should be told and should be shared. And so just kind of reminding yourself that, hey, I can do this. I can summon the energy to put this story out there, because it does mean something. It does matter. And somebody believed in me, and so I'm going to believe in myself. And again, if you wake up one morning and you just don't have it in you to write that day, and you to just process your feelings and your emotions. But then if you get a spurt of inspiration, the rules are out the window. We can stay up all night now writing if we want to. You know, a lot of us don't need to be somewhere in the morning. We don't have those hard, fast bedtimes anymore. You don't have to take a shower in the mornings now. So if you get that inspiration and it does come to you, the rules are out the window. Just run with it, go with it. So yeah, I think it's kind of that balance between I feel it, I don't feel it.
I love that rules are out the window. You know, we got 10 inches of snow today, and John and I both looked out the window this morning and went, we're not going to shovel the driveway, because guess what? We're not going anywhere.
Right.
And it's going to be warm in a couple days, and it will melt on its own. And it was like, oh, that's so nice. There's an hour of our life we just got back, you know? So it's true. And even, you know, I've been very flexible with myself on weekends versus weekdays. I just can't get it together to do something on Friday. Well, I'll do it on Saturday, because guess what? It doesn't matter if it's a weekend or a weekday at this point. So I think we can be a little more relaxed with ourselves and give ourselves a break on a lot of those things, which does open up extra time here and there for the creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. By the way, I welcome people to ask questions in the chat box. If you have anything you want to ask Teresa, if you want advice on a particular issue that you are having trouble with, Teresa is great. She's been a coach for a long time for writers. She knows how to overcome lots of problems, and she has a lot of great insights on creativity. So please feel free to ask your questions there. And while you're doing that, and Teresa will continue this discussion, but I wanted to share a little bit of my own creative burst, which happened a long time ago, but I think it's kind of relevant for what we're talking about now. So I'm going to share my screen. And hopefully Teresa doesn't go away. So this is Cody. Cody was our first, the first dog John and I had when we were first married. He was a good boy. He was a black lab, and we had him for almost 14 years. If any of you have ever owned a lab, you know that their tail is very thick and very strong, and it wags very fast. And when it does that, it knocks over everything in its path. So one day we were living way up in the mountains of Colorado. We had a little house, and Matt, our son, was probably about 6, 7 months old. And he was right at that point where he wasn't walking yet, but he was starting to pull himself up and stand, hanging on to something. And then he'd like let go and sort of lunge at the next thing and grab and stand. So I'm watching Matt navigate through the living room like this. And Cody is right there with him, his tail going like crazy. And I realized that Matt was trying to lunge around Cody's tail. And if you were at the free webinar that we did last week with Alice Kuipers on connecting with your creativity during this time, and by the way, if you go on our writeforkids.org blog, you'll see the link to the replay of that if you missed it. Alice said, creativity is inspiration plus observation. Inspiration plus observation. And Teresa, you mentioned that writers are very observing people. And she also said that sometimes all you need to do is shift your perspective a couple inches. Like you're looking through the lens of a camera and you might raise the camera or drop it a couple inches, you get a whole new picture. And when she said that, I realized that's what I had done at that moment. Because what I did is I was watching a scene that I had watched many times, but all of a sudden I shifted my perspective down to Matt's level. And I saw Cody's tail from about 2 feet off the ground instead of my normal 5'7" height. And I realized that that tail looks a lot different when you're trying to navigate across the living room and you are 2 feet tall and you really can't walk yet anyway. And the words, look out, here comes the tail, popped into my head. And I put Matt to bed and I sat down and I wrote a poem. It all came out of me at once. And this has never happened before, by the way. I don't want to sound like this is like a regular process for me. But it came out of me pretty much in one piece. And so I'm going to show you the next slide. I submitted it to Children's Playmate magazine. It got published a couple months later. And I titled it Beware of Dog. And so I'm going to read this poem to you right now. They changed a few of the words. So if you're seeing this on your screen, ignore that. I'm going to read you the actual original version of the poem. Don't you hate it when you submit a poem and they change like 2 or 3 words and you're like, no, that's not the way it was supposed to be. I understand why they did, but anyway, Children's Playmate, it no longer exists as a magazine, unfortunately, but it was part of the Children's Better Health Institute magazines. It was right between Humpty Dumpty and Jack and Jill. It was for kids about age 6 to 9. What ultimately happened, US Kids bought Children's Better Health Institute, etc. They expanded Humpty Dumpty and Jack and Jill, the age groups, and they did away with Children's Playmate. So I have several copies of this magazine. It is now a collector's item. So there you go. It just made it all the more valuable. I have to switch my glasses here. No, I'm good. Okay, so here's my poem. Beware of dog. Look out, here comes the tail, the wagging, wiggling, waving tail. It topples the tables and knocks over chairs. It swats my sister down the stairs. Run fast, here come the paws. The pouncing, pushing, poking paws. They open my door and bounce on my bed. They leave mucky mud prints all over my head. Hide quick, here comes the tongue. The slurpy, sticky, sloppy tongue. It slathers my ears and slobbers my nose. When I'm eating a cookie, it drools on my toes. Be quiet, the tongue's slowing down. The tails stop twirling, paws stay on the ground. He snuggles beside me, his head's on my lap. I love my dog best when he's taking a nap. So that was my poem that was inspired by that moment of watching Cody, Matt try to navigate around Cody's tail. And so my point of telling you all this is that in our everyday lives, we have moments of inspiration if we practice observation and try to see the things that we've seen every day of our life and suddenly see them a little differently. Move your lens a couple inches. And just something like that might inspire you to write a paragraph or a exchange of dialogue, or a short poem or something, and that might be enough to open up the floodgates of your creativity. And even if the thing you write never gets published or becomes something, you have created something. And I think sometimes just the act of creativity alone in and of itself, for whatever reason, opens up more creativity and allows you to work on the bigger projects that you really want to be working on. So
That was a great poem. That was a great poem.
thank you. Thank you. It was fun. So thank you. Anybody have any questions, any, you know, anything you want to add, any comments about creativity? Sarah asks, where do we send poems for publication? Most children's magazines are accepting poetry submissions. So you want to just, you know, look at children's magazines, and they are geared to different age groups. They have different writing guidelines. A great place to start is simply Google magazines for children. And you'll come up with a list, and you want to go to the magazine's specific websites and look at their submission guidelines, and they will tell you what kind of poetry they're looking for. Sometimes it's theme related, but most will take poetry. So Teresa, how do you think of fresh ideas for your blog after 6 years? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. Yeah, I've been writing this blog every week for 6 years without fail. There have been a couple of times I've reposted one for the holidays or something like that. But other than that, every single week I've been producing new work. And I think it's because from the very beginning of this blog, I said to myself, there will be no hard and fast rules or stipulations, no themes, no intentions at all for this blog. I'm going to write about whatever I feel inspired to write about that week. And because of that, you know, one week I might write a post about feeling lonely, and what is that loneliness teaching me about creativity? The next week I might write a post about, you know, the joy of being observant, going for a walk and being observant. And there's no, because there's no particular themes that I tied myself to, I'm able to just be free to write whatever I want to write. So I've never had a problem in any given week coming up with something I want to write about. And I think it's because, again, the rules went out the window. I do stick to a certain length. They're all between 350 at the shortest and 700 at the longest. But that's not intentional either. They just kind of come out that way. So I think when you approach something with just love and permission, that you can, it doesn't create the things that cause us to block up.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Love and permission. I love that. Love that. Let's see. I'm scrolling through. Thank you all for the comments here. So again, we don't always see who is sending these because of the way our Zoom. Oh, there we go, Elizabeth. I'm always at awe with historical writers. I'm trying to work through one. She's trying to work through some historical fiction now. Do you have a pictogram hung somewhere to help with the timeline when you're writing your historical fiction? Do you, Teresa, do you create a timeline that you kind of look at to make sure the events are taking place at the right time?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a visual person. I'm an auditory person. So I don't hang things up on the wall. I don't have like a pictorial timeline, but I think those can be extremely useful if that's the way that you process things and you like to learn. I always tell people, do what works for the way that your mind works and the way that you process, because you're more likely to follow through and you're more likely to enjoy doing it. So for me, I just keep my timeline in, you know, in a Word document. It kind of comes out more like a list, and I can, you know, I can update it that way. But absolutely, a timeline is really important for historical fiction.
Mm-hmm. Great. I see some of you posted in the Q&A section, so I'll get to those too. So thank you for that. Susie says, creativity is so fickle. Yes, it is. When I'm totally stuck, I go to my word prompt cards created by my kids. I pick a few cards and combine the words into a story idea. That's a great writing prompt. And what a lot of people do is they create one stack of nouns, one stack of verbs, and one stack of like setting, you know, bedroom, park, whatever, and you just pull one from each, and you know, you get a you have to then create a story of this person or animal or whatever who was doing this in this place, as a prompt. But there's a lot of ways to do that. So that's great.
I love that she gets her kids involved in that,
Yes.
because we're writing for children, and so whatever they're thinking of, whatever prompts they're providing, that's a good indication of what kids are thinking about. I think it's great to have your kids provide some of those prompts. That's an awesome way to connect with them as well.
It really is. Someone here from Joyce, thoughts about creativity and finding voice. Voice is a big part of creativity. So do you have thoughts on developing your voice as you're working through your creativity or becoming creative, Teresa?
Yeah, I mean, it took me years to develop my voice, especially when I started out trying to write a novel right from the beginning, and very quickly realized that I didn't know how to write a novel, but more importantly, I didn't have my voice yet. And so I paused and I started writing personal essays and short stories and poems and doing different kinds of writing until I landed on what I felt comfortable with as my voice. And then when I went back to the novel, it came together so much better. So sometimes finding our voice means trying different things, reading different things, exploring different aspects of our voice, maybe even reading something like a play, which is great dialogue, or reading something that you would normally not read to help you find your voice. And, I think definitely journaling also helps us find our voice, because that's when we're most free to be ourselves. And you can kind of look at, well, how do you express yourself in your journal? And would that carry over well to your writing? My blog is very, very personal. It's totally my voice. But again, that came from, I didn't start my blog till I'd been writing for years. I'm not sure how it would have come out in the beginning. So I think definitely trying different types of writing helps a lot, finding voice.
That's a great suggestion. First of all, let's see. Sheila says, first of all, that she used your historical fiction in her book clubs a few years back. And so she says, thank you for that. Her question is, having done some blogs before, how many and so many blogs out there, how do you build and sustain your audience of readers? So this is more of a marketing question, but Teresa's good at that. So any suggestions for that, Teresa?
That is such a good question, because obviously there was a time when there were not that many bloggers. And if you got in on blogging then, you very quickly built an audience. But now there's thousands and thousands of blogs. So we run into that same issue of how do we rise above the noise? Well, when I started blogging, a consultant told me, expect it to take about 2 years before you have fully developed an audience. And I thought, 2 years? Like that's a long time. But remember, I was intending to not ever write a blog until I came up with a concept that excited me. I wasn't trying to write something that was going to fit the market or have a certain standard to it, because I knew that if I was going to sustain the energy of doing a weekly blog, it had to be something that I wanted to do. So then I told myself, well, if I want to do this, and this is my way of expressing myself, I mean, who cares if it takes 2 years to build an audience? And I wouldn't say that it took that long for me, but it took a good year before I started to see any good number of followers following me, or started having my blogs picked up and read on the radio, or picked up and reposted on other blogs. It took about a year, but in the meantime, I was having a great time producing a lot of really good content, which, by the way, many of those early blogs are now in my book. So you find other ways to use that early work that you created before you had a lot of followers, and that has a lot of satisfaction too. Absolutely.
There is no wasted writing, really. No matter where it ends up or what you use it for, it's all good. Amy says, when I'm struggling with writing, I find a passage in a published book that is more telling than showing and try to rewrite it. That's a great writing exercise.
Yes.
Because we've all read books where we go, wait a minute, where was the editor here? This is not, you know, this is not as good as it could be. So make it better. Have that be a writing exercise. I love that. I am, sorry, I'm skimming through some of your comments here. Anybody who's asking very specific writing questions on how to write historical fiction or self-publishing, we'll show you a slide in a minute about Teresa's self-publishing blueprint, but also her writing solutions, which is the shorter webinar recordings that we have on writingblueprints.com. She did one on historical fiction where she goes way in depth on all this stuff, and it's awesome. So Alexine says, so many children's stories are in a classroom setting. How will the new COVID-19 reality affect this? Should we assume that traditional classrooms, recesses, etc., will come back in the near future? And that's a great question. I'm assuming they will. I think we have to go under that assumption. Teresa, do you agree with that?
I know that the teachers are very much hoping that happens. We all know that instruction takes place better in a classroom in person.
Also understand that if you wrote your book now and you submitted it to a publisher now, even if you got a really quick response and acceptance from a publisher, that's going to be several months out. And then it's going to take probably at least 2 years before your book is published, and maybe longer because things are getting pushed back now. So by the time that comes out, I'm hoping COVID-19 will be a dim memory for all of us. And I don't know if publishers are necessarily going to want books that remind, especially little kids, remind them of this time. Certainly, if you were writing a young adult novel that takes place right now, you might work some of this into it because it's just it will be part of our collective history. But I don't think it has to be sort of the norm in your classroom settings going forward. That would be my impression anyway. Here's a quick self-publishing question, but a lot of people have asked this. I was told that self-publishers should not publish picture books and that one should only try to publish it traditionally. What is your take on that statement? Again, you get into this in a lot of detail in your self-publishing blueprint, but just real quick, self-publishing picture books, is this a good or bad idea?
I think the reason that picture books are often singled out as being challenging to self-publish is because they're expensive. So if you're going to self-publish a picture book, you're going to have to hire an illustrator and pay that illustrator. You'll have to hire a designer because laying out the book is really important. Printing a picture book, we often want to print them in color, so that's going to cost you more money. So a lot of people do hear oftentimes the suggestion, don't self-publish a picture book. And it usually comes down to that, the fact that it's expensive. But I actually do have several friends who have self-published picture books and done really well with them. And again, they did it by being very professional, hiring authentic illustrators, not their sister-in-law who likes to paint. They hired actual illustrators and designers. They still had editors, even though it's a picture book. They still had somebody look at the grammar and the punctuation, and they did a really good job. And I think if you're serious about it and you are willing to get out there and market, self-published picture books can do well. And I have several friends whose self-published picture books have won awards even. But you have to be willing to put the work in order to make it succeed.
I agree. And invest in those really good illustrations. That is key. Very, very important. Okay, just a couple more here. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Teresa. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. Jane Buttery has commented that she uses Scrivener to help keep notes while she's, to outline, to keep research notes. I know a lot of writers love Scrivener. Have you ever used Scrivener, Teresa?
I don't use Scrivener. Some of my clients use Scrivener and they use other types of software. I am a very, I I'm not a big technology person, and I've been doing this for 28 years. So a lot of my habits are very old and very ingrained. I have a history degree, and so I still go back to like my old ways of accessing my information. And you would not want to see this office when I'm writing my historical fiction. And there's books laid out everywhere, and I've marked in the margins, and I'm stacking them in a certain way, and I'm tracking them on my Word documents. So I do think that those products can work really well for some people. It's just I had a system already long in place from before those things even existed, and so I'm really comfortable with my old ways of doing things.
Yeah, I am too. You know, when I research something, I go back to the old index cards, colored index cards, different colors for different things. And then I can move them around. I put 1 point per card and move it around. And then I put on the back what resource I found it from. That's just how I learned how to do it back in high school. And you're right. Once you learn something and it works for you, it's like, this is how I got to do it. And, you know, you just hope to God you don't lose the index cards, I guess.
Right. And I got to say that for me, I mean, it's a sort of a rediscovery thing. Like for me, I'll be like, oh, wait, where was that quote? I know there was that detail about how many ration coupons you needed for that particular item. And then I grab my books out, and as I'm flipping through trying to find that detail again, I find other things that when I originally read it, I didn't realize I was going to need them. And so I'm in a constant state of discovery by going back to my sort of old fashioned way of doing things. That is really, it's exciting. It's like,
yeah,
you're always uncovering something.
I know. So whatever works for you. So here's the final question, and I think it's a really good one. I'm going to put you on the spot a little here, Teresa. Do you have any regrets about any of your books? And how is your writing different now than when you wrote your first book? How have you grown as a writer? It's a big question, 2 big questions.
You know, do I have any regrets? No. I have had sort of an unusual journey with my books. And so I've been very lucky to have my finger in every aspect of the production of my books. So I don't have any regrets because every little mistake I made, I learned from, and that really helped me to improve. The other night, my daughter's friend asked if he could call me. He read my book, Remember Awake, which was my first book that I wrote that came out in 2002. So this is an 18-year-old book. And he was just telling me how much he loved the story and asking me these awesome, awesome questions about the research and the character development. And that was my first book, which I'm sure if you compared that writing to my writing now, you would notice differences. But it doesn't matter because he still loved the story and I still love the story. And so even though we may improve and change as writers over time, I don't think we're ever going to regret our early work. It's, because it was special. It's still special.
I totally agree. Totally agree. Well, let me share my screen again one last time. Where was I here? So for those of you who are interested in checking out Teresa's self-publishing blueprint, we have a free trial version. And here's the link, bit.ly/selfpub-try. And you'll get a nice taste of Teresa's blueprint, and there's some worksheets there and videos to help you actually get started in analyzing what you want out of your project and asking some really important questions that will help point you to your self-publishing journey and what type of self-publishing you're going to be doing and that sort of thing. And as I said, she is quite the expert. So check that out if you are interested. And also, and while you're on writingblueprints.com, you can check out all of her Writing Solutions webinars. Again, there's the great one on historical fiction. You've done one on writing dialogue, setting up school visits, writing from your own experience, the courage to write your own experience. I'm trying to remember them all.
Courage to write outside your
The
experience.
Courage to Write Outside Your Experience, and the 10 Things All Successful Authors Do. Aha. And I'm sure there will be more by the time you get there, because she's always creating amazing products for us. And again, a reminder, if you want to get our free ebook, The Ultimate Children's Writing Cheat Sheet, writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet. And then you'll also get notifications for everything we do. So thank you again, Teresa, for joining us tonight. And thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you again next week on our next Distancing Social. Okay, good night, everybody.